I'm sitting here trying to make sense of how my life turned upside down in just a few months. I'm 35, work as a software developer, and until recently, thought I had a pretty good marriage. My wife and I have been together for 6 years, and for most of that time, things were great. We met when we were both settling into our careers. I had taken a different path than most, learned coding through a technical program instead of college. It worked out well for me. I built up a solid reputation in the industry, and my skills spoke louder than any degree could. My wife went the traditional route with her MBA and worked her way up to a senior management position. Early in our relationship, we had some friendly debates about workplace dynamics. I tell her about challenges with project managers who didn't understand development timelines, and she'd always defend management's perspective. They see things you don't, she'd say, even though she'd never met my managers. After a while, I learned to keep work stories to myself unless they were about promotions or good news. I always felt she wished I'd gone back for a degree. She brought it up a few times before we got married, but dropped it when I showed her the math on student loans. We were both debt-free and making similar money, so why rock the boat? The first 4 years of marriage were honestly fantastic. We had regular date nights, shared hobbies, cooked together, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Then the pandemic hit, and we both started working from home. Our house had 3 extra bedrooms. One was already my office, and we set up another for her. I kept my work routine pretty formal. Got up early, showered, dressed properly, and treated it like a regular workday. My wife took a more relaxed approach. She'd roll out of bed late, work in comfortable clothes, and spend half her time playing mobile games between meetings. The weird thing is, being in the same house all day actually made us more distant. I closed my door during my daily team meetings, which really bothered her for some reason. She said it made her feel like I was hiding something. I tried to keep our shared activities going, but she'd brush it off saying, "We see each other all day anyway." Things got worse when her company started bringing people back to the office part-time. She jumped at the chance, while my company stayed remote. Suddenly, she was spending more and more time with her coworkers after work, drinks, dinners, gatherings I wasn't invited to. When I asked about these events, she'd get defensive and change the subject. Then last month, she asked me to wipe her old iPad for her niece. Maybe she thought I'd just reset it without looking, or maybe she'd gotten careless. I found messages between her and her boss. Pictures. Videos. They've been having an affair for 2 months. I can't describe how it felt reading those messages. I saved everything to my personal cloud storage and contacted a lawyer. He suggested getting more evidence, so I hired a private investigator. For 4 weeks, I kept quiet while gathering proof. My wife didn't notice anything different. We were barely talking by then anyway. Yesterday, my lawyer said he had the divorce papers ready. I'd managed to stay calm until then, but something snapped when she came home late that night. I confronted her about the affair. Her response shocked me. She turned cruel, saying I wasn't emotionally available or intellectually stimulating enough. When I mentioned having a lawyer, she laughed and said I'd never leave her. She told me even if I divorced her, she'd get half my money, so I might as well stay and occasionally get some attention. I took a week off work and slept in my office. This morning, after she left, I went to my lawyer with an idea. He tried to talk me out of it, warning me it could affect the divorce settlement, but I couldn't let go of her mocking words. I had a custom cake made with a photo of her and her boss together, and had it delivered to her office along with the divorce papers. The process server told me he'd never seen anything like it. She screamed, knocked the cake over, and had a meltdown in front of her coworkers. She hasn't come home. Her mom texted saying she's staying there. My phone's full of missed calls and messages I haven't bothered to read. The satisfaction of the cake revenge is wearing off, and I'm starting to wonder if I made things worse for myself. The support I've received from friends this past week has been incredible. My boss extended my time off to 2 weeks. He's always been understanding about personal matters. I've been busy following my lawyer's advice, split our savings, moved my share to a separate account, changed all the bill payments, and froze my credit. He gave me a whole checklist of things to handle, and I'm glad there are no kids involved to complicate things. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in helping people deal with affairs. After 2 sessions, I'm feeling more stable. The extreme ups and downs aren't hitting as hard, though I still have rough moments. The therapist helped me understand that my reaction with the cake wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking back some control. My wife's still staying at her mom's place. She wanted to meet and talk on Saturday, but my lawyer advised having the conversation either at his office with both lawyers present or with witnesses if we met elsewhere. When I told her this, she mentioned she hadn't hired a lawyer yet. Following my lawyer's advice, I agreed to meet at our house with 2 mutual friends present, all of us recording on our phones. When she arrived, she tried to hug me, but I just held up my phone and started recording. She actually seemed sorry this time, very different from her attitude the week before. She said the whole affair felt like watching someone else's life, that she got caught up in the excitement. When she asked if I wanted to know why it happened, I told her I didn't care anymore, but she insisted on explaining. Turns out, when her office reopened, she got close to 3 older coworkers, 2 of them divorced. According to her, these women kept filling her head with ideas about how she deserved better. The main instigator, Sarah, took stories about my past issues with managers and twisted them, telling my wife I was threatened by educated people and submissive. They convinced her she needed someone more, take charge. The fallout at her office was intense. Only 7 people saw the cake incident: my wife, her 3 friends, her boss, and 2 other coworkers. Her boss immediately ended the affair and told her to only contact him through email about work matters. The 3 friends who encouraged the affair suddenly turned on her, publicly calling her awful for cheating. Then she dropped a bomb. She needed $5,000. I was confused because she still had money in her account. Apparently, her 3 friends were now blackmailing her, threatening to report everything to HR if she didn't pay up. She was begging for help. I told her there was no going back to normal. Everything had changed. I advised her to report the situation to HR herself. It would be better than living in fear of blackmail. She seemed unsure but finally asked the question I knew was coming. What about us? I made it clear there was no us anymore. The best I could do was give advice about her work situation, but suggested she'd probably need to find a new job after this. I also recommended she get therapy, pointing out that someone who could go from laughing in my face to begging for help in a week probably needed to sort themselves out. When she brought up the cake incident, I simply said, "Yeah, I'm getting help for that too." She left without saying whether she'd take my advice about the blackmail. I'm still amazed at how workplace politics played such a big role in destroying my marriage. But the real shock was seeing how quickly her friends turned on her. They went from encouraging the affair to threatening her in the span of a week. Throughout all this, my lawyer keeps reminding me to handle everything by the book from now on. One emotional outburst with a cake was enough. Now we need to play it smart and steady. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, and I'm trying to focus on healing and moving on, even though some days are harder than others. First week back at work, and my boss surprised everyone by letting us leave early for the long weekend. I'm doing better, still seeing the therapist regularly. Last weekend, I took a drive out to the countryside to clear my head. I ended up stopping at this family-owned kennel that breeds Japanese Akitas. I'd never seen these dogs before, but after spending some time playing with the puppies and talking to the owner about how loyal and protective they are, I'm seriously thinking about getting one. They're expensive, but I could use the companionship. It's funny, my wife and I talked about getting a dog for years, but she could never decide on a breed she liked. My wife still hasn't moved back home, but things have taken a new turn. Her lawyer contacted mine about marriage counseling. I didn't want to go, but my lawyer explained that I needed to appear reasonable throughout the divorce process. He said that after the cake incident, we need to show I'm level-headed and willing to participate in reasonable requests. His advice was simple: attend the session, stay neutral, don't admit to any faults, and don't agree to anything, not even a second session. The counseling session was over video call, me at home, my wife at her mom's house, and the counselor in an office. It was an interesting 2 hours of the counselor trying to spread the blame around. She kept saying things like, "Surely you can see how distance could create needs. It takes 2 people to create problems in a marriage." I kept my responses simple and didn't engage more than necessary. They spent most of the session trying to get me to take even a small portion of the blame, probably so my wife could say, "See, we both made mistakes. Now let's fix this." Near the end, when the counselor asked why I was being so cold, I just said, "Did you know that finding out about an affair can cause the same kind of trauma as PTSD?" Just as the session was ending, my wife asked if I'd agree to another session next week. I told her it wasn't a good idea. She started asking what it would take to get me to agree to more counseling, but I just said good night and ended the call. Now I'm waiting to see what other reasonable requests I'll need to entertain to keep up this image of being a well-adjusted person who had one moment of bad judgment rather than someone who acts out regularly. My lawyer says this is all part of the process, showing that the cake incident was a one-time emotional response to an extreme situation, not a pattern of behavior. I'm starting to see things more clearly now. Everything that happened, from the way my wife's coworkers manipulated her to her cruel words that night, to my revenge with the cake, it all feels like it happened to someone else. I'm not proud of how I handle things with a cake, but I'm not beating myself up about it either. Sometimes you need to hit bottom before you can start climbing back up. Tomorrow, I went back to look at those Akita puppies. Maybe it's time to start building a new life, one where loyalty means something. The house feels empty, but I'm starting to realize that empty is better than fake. My therapist says it's good that I'm making plans for the future instead of dwelling on the past. The divorce will take time, and I know there will be more difficult moments ahead. But for the first time since finding those messages on the iPad, I feel like I'm moving forward instead of just reacting. It's not the life I planned for, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. Sometimes the plans we make aren't as good as the paths we find ourselves on. The one thing I've learned from all this is that you can't control what other people, you can only control how you respond. From now on, I'm choosing to respond with dignity. Well, except for that one time with the cake. But hey, nobody's perfect. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.